My in-laws ruined our wedding and called me too ordinary. Now, years later, they want to be part of my family. I always thought my wedding day would be a magical experience, something straight out of a fairy tale. I dreamed of exchanging vows with Tom, the man I loved, surrounded by family and friends in a beautiful setting. What I never expected was that our wedding day would turn into a nightmare, thanks to the very people who were supposed to be there celebrating with us. My in-laws. Tom and I had been together for 3 wonderful years, and everything about our relationship felt perfect. He was kind, thoughtful, and funny, exactly what I had always wanted in a partner. I thought that when we decided to get married, it would be the happiest time of our lives. But as it turned out, it wasn't just the excitement and joy I had imagined. It was more about managing expectations and dealing with the ever-growing tensions surrounding our families. From the moment we announced our engagement, there was a shift in the air. I noticed something was off when Tom's parents reacted to our news. They smiled politely, but their eyes told a different story. They were disappointed, not because they didn't like me, but because they had certain expectations about who their son should marry. Tom's father, Robert, was a wealthy, self-made businessman with a towering presence, and I could already sense his disapproval. Tom's mother, Elaine, was quieter, but just as controlling in her own way. She smiled and nodded, but I could see the subtle judgments in the way she looked at me, like I wasn't quite good enough for their son. The first time I really felt their presence was when we started planning the wedding. I had always imagined a small, intimate ceremony, just family and close friends, something simple but meaningful, but as soon as we brought it up to Tom's parents, their reactions were less than supportive. "You can't possibly think we'll keep this wedding small," Robert had said, a stern expression on his face. "Our family has a reputation to uphold. It needs to be grand, elegant, a real spectacle." I was taken aback. I hadn't expected them to try and take over our wedding plans, but I tried to remain calm, assuring Tom that we could find a middle ground. But every time we discussed the wedding with his parents, I could see that their idea of middle ground was nothing like mine. They wanted something extravagant, an event that would highlight their wealth and status, not just our love for each other. Elaine, though seemingly pleasant at first, began to take charge in ways that I hadn't anticipated. She insisted on helping with the planning, which at first I was grateful for. I didn't have the energy to plan every detail myself, so when she offered to take over, I reluctantly agreed. That was my first mistake. Elaine's help quickly turned into control. She began picking out flowers, suggesting venues, and even changing the details of the dress I had picked. When I showed her the gown I had fallen in love with, she wrinkled her nose. "That's not quite what we had in mind," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You'll want something a bit more refined, don't you think? Something champagne-colored, maybe." I'd always dreamed of wearing white on my wedding day, but she seemed to think my vision didn't matter. "It's all about the image," she said. "You need to think about what's best for the family." I felt my blood boil, but I tried to keep my composure. It was my day and I had to remember that. But things didn't get any better. The seating arrangements for the reception were changed without my approval. I found out that Elaine had invited her entire social circle, people I didn't even know, without so much as asking if I was comfortable with it. Every time I tried to voice my opinions or make decisions, it felt like I was being shut down. The worst moment came when I suggested a smaller ceremony. "I think we should keep the ceremony intimate. Just close family and friends," I told Tom one evening. Tom looked at me, torn between what I wanted and what his parents wanted. "I understand, Sarah," he said, "but my dad, he's been insistent on having a bigger wedding. I don't want to upset them." I felt a lump form in my throat. The man I loved was caught between his loyalty to me and his loyalty to his family, and it was tearing him apart. Weeks passed, and the tension between Tom and me started to grow. We fought over the wedding plans more than we ever had. Every conversation seemed to circle back to his parents' control over the wedding. I had never been so frustrated in my life. The night before the wedding, we had the rehearsal dinner. Tom and I were both on edge, trying to keep things calm, but it didn't take long for everything to fall apart. Elaine was busying herself with last-minute details, insisting that everything was perfect. She hovered over the staff, making sure the table settings were precisely how she wanted them. Robert, who had been drinking steadily throughout the evening, began talking loudly to Tom's friends. I could tell he was already uncomfortable, trying to steer the conversation away from topics that seemed to make his father uneasy. But then it happened. Tom's father stood up, glass in hand, and in a voice louder than anyone would have liked, he began a toast. "I'd like to propose a toast to my son Tom and his beautiful bride-to-be, Sarah," he began, and I managed a forced smile. "You know, it's not often that a man of Tom's caliber marries someone who can elevate him to the status he deserves." He took a swig of his drink. "A marriage isn't just about love. It's about business and stability. And Sarah, I'm confident you'll be a worthy addition to the family." The room went silent. My face burned with embarrassment, and I could feel my heart sink. It wasn't just a toast, it was a public statement that made me feel small, like I was a commodity to his family, rather than a partner in this marriage. Tom's friends exchanged uncomfortable glances, and I could see the awkwardness spreading like a cloud across the room. I turned to Tom, who looked completely mortified. His face was pale, and his hands were clenched at his sides. Elaine sat there, offering nothing but a small, thin smile, as if nothing was wrong. I couldn't believe it. How could they be so insensitive? How could his father, in particular, reduce our marriage to a mere business arrangement? After dinner, Tom and I had our first real argument. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low and strained. "I didn't know my dad was going to say that. I didn't know he would embarrass you like that. I'll talk to him." But his words felt hollow. What was there to say? His parents had already made their feelings clear, and nothing I said could change their perspective. The damage had been done. The next morning was a blur of nerves and anticipation. As I got dressed in my bridal suite, I tried to focus on the ceremony ahead. But then, as if on cue, Elaine barged into the room, demanding to see the dress I was wearing. She insisted that the flowers be rearranged yet again, and asked if I was sure about the seating arrangements. I could feel the walls closing in on me as her presence suffocated the room. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, the moment arrived. Tom and I stood at the altar, looking into each other's eyes, ready to say our vows. I could feel the warmth of his hand in mine, and for a moment I thought maybe everything would be okay. But then, halfway through the ceremony, Robert stood up. "Stop!" he shouted. The words echoed through the church, and everyone turned to look at him in shock. "This wedding can't go on. Not like this. Not without an apology from Sarah's family." My heart stopped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tom's father had just interrupted our ceremony on our wedding day, demanding an apology from my family for some perceived slight I didn't even know about. I looked at Tom, who seemed equally stunned. My mind raced, but there was nothing I could do to stop the chaos unfolding before me. And in that moment, I realized that the wedding wasn't just about Tom and me anymore. It had become a battleground. The in-laws had ruined what should have been the happiest day of our lives. The rest of the day was a blur of tears, apologies, and tense conversations. Tom and I eventually decided to continue the ceremony, but the joy of the day had been overshadowed by the drama. The wedding that should have been a celebration of our love had been turned into a battleground, and I couldn't shake the feeling that our families had stolen something precious from us. In the end, I married Tom, but the wedding we had dreamed of was forever tainted by the actions of his parents. I learned that sometimes, no matter how much you try to keep things peaceful, family dynamics can explode in ways you can't predict. And in that moment, I realized that love alone doesn't protect you from the chaos of family drama. This was the day that changed everything, the day my in-laws ruined our wedding. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.